They blamed me without saying my name. I sat at the conference table, my dark hair pulled back neatly, hands folded in front of me, wearing the same understated gray blazer I'd worn 100 times before. And I listened as they built a case against me using assumptions instead of facts. They spoke in careful language, corporate language, the kind designed to accuse without actually accusing. Someone didn't follow protocol. There was a breakdown in communication. We need accountability. They never looked directly at me, but I could feel every word pointed in my direction like arrows. And I didn't say anything, not because I was guilty, but because I knew something they didn't. The truth always surfaces, and when it did, I wanted them to remember this moment. The meeting had been called suddenly, an emergency session to address what they were calling a serious incident. A client contract had nearly fallen through. Negotiations that should have been straightforward had become complicated. Deadlines had been missed, and according to the whispers I'd heard in the hallway before the meeting started, I was the reason why. Never mind that I'd been warning people for weeks. Never mind that I'd sent detailed emails outlining potential issues. Never mind that I'd literally predicted this exact scenario in a meeting 3 months ago that nobody had taken seriously. None of that mattered now. They needed someone to blame, and I was convenient. The department head started the meeting with a grave expression. "We're here to understand what went wrong with the Jensen account." He looked around the table, his eyes skipping over me like I was furniture. This was a critical contract. The client was ready to sign, and then something happened that made them reconsider. He paused for effect. "We need to identify the breakdown." My colleague Sarah, who sat 2 seats away from me, shifted uncomfortably. She knew. I could tell by the way she wouldn't meet my eyes. She knew exactly what had happened, and she knew it wasn't my fault, but she wasn't going to say anything. Nobody was, because speaking up meant risking their own reputation. The project lead, a man named Derek, who'd been with the company for barely a year, jumped in. From what I understand, there was a communication issue. The client didn't receive critical information on time. He glanced at me, just briefly, just long enough to make his implication clear. I kept my expression calm, serious, emotionally grounded. I'd learned a long time ago that reacting emotionally in these situations only made things worse. So I sat still, my light brown skin probably showing no emotion at all, and I waited. Derek continued. The timeline was clear, everyone knew their responsibilities, and yet the ball was dropped. Someone asked what information the client had been missing. Derek pulled up an email on the screen. This summary, it should have been sent last Tuesday. The client called on Thursday asking why they hadn't received it. By the time they got it, they'd already started having doubts about our organization. He didn't say I was supposed to send it. He didn't have to. The implication hung in the air thick enough to cut. I looked at the email on the screen. I'd seen it before. I'd written most of it, actually, but I hadn't been the one assigned to send it. That had been Derek's responsibility. He'd volunteered for it in a meeting 2 weeks ago, said he wanted to take ownership of client communications. I had the meeting notes to prove it. The department head asked who was responsible for that communication. Derek hesitated for just a second. "It was supposed to be a team effort," he said carefully, "but the primary point of contact was..." He trailed off, looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to confess to something I hadn't done. I didn't take the bait. I just looked back at him calmly, my firm voice ready but staying silent. Let him say it. Let him accuse me directly. He didn't. Instead, he pivoted. There seems to have been confusion about responsibilities. The department head frowned. Confusion how? Sarah finally spoke up, but not to defend me. "I think maybe the task assignments weren't clear enough," she said, trying to sound diplomatic, but really just deflecting blame away from herself. Another colleague nodded. "Yeah, I wasn't sure who was handling what." It was remarkable, really, how quickly people rewrote history when their jobs felt threatened. I'd been in the assignment meeting. I'd taken notes. I knew exactly who was responsible for what, and none of them were telling the truth. but I still didn't speak because I wanted to see how far they'd go. I wanted to see who would lie, who would stay silent, and who, if anyone, would tell the truth. Derek pulled up another document. There were also some concerns about the proposal content. The client felt like we didn't fully understand their needs. He looked around the table. This suggests whoever drafted the initial proposal missed some key points. Except I'd drafted that proposal, and it had been comprehensive, detailed, exactly aligned with what the client had asked for. I knew because I spent 3 days on it, had 2 calls with the client to clarify their requirements, and sent a draft to the team for review. Derek made edits, so had Sarah, so had the department head. The final version that went to the client had been a group effort, but now, apparently, it was my failure alone. The department head sighed heavily. This is disappointing. We pride ourselves on professionalism and accountability. He looked directly at me for the first time. Do you have anything to say? It was the moment they'd been waiting for. The moment I was supposed to apologize, take responsibility, make it easy for everyone to move on. I looked back at him, my expression unchanged. Yes, I said calmly, I have a lot to say, but I'd like to hear the rest of the discussion first. He blinked, surprised. He expected defensiveness or excuses, not patience. All right, he said slowly. Does anyone else have input? Another colleague spoke up. I think we need better systems, clearer ownership of tasks. This kind of thing shouldn't happen. It was such a safe, meaningless contribution, the kind of thing you say when you want to seem engaged without actually helping. Derek nodded enthusiastically. Exactly, we need accountability. The irony of him talking about accountability while actively avoiding his own responsibility was almost funny. Almost. The department head looked at me again. Anything you want to add now? I shook my head. Not yet. He looked frustrated but didn't push. Fine, let's take a short break. We'll reconvene in 10 minutes. During the break, Sarah approached me in the hallway. Look, I'm sorry, she said quietly. I know this isn't entirely fair, but... She trailed off. I looked at her. But what? She shifted her weight. But Derek's been angling for a promotion, and the department head likes him. If this goes badly, he'll make sure it doesn't stick to him. I kept my voice level. So it should stick to me instead? She looked uncomfortable. I'm just saying, maybe don't make this a bigger thing than it needs to be. I almost laughed. Sarah, they're blaming me for someone else's mistake. It's already a big thing. She looked away. I can't help you, she said. I have a family. I need this job. And she walked away. When we reconvened, the department head looked at me expectantly. Ready to discuss this? I nodded. Yes. I pulled out my tablet, opened my files, and placed it on the table in front of me. Before I respond to the accusations, no one's accusing you, Derek interrupted quickly. I looked at him. Then what would you call this meeting? He shifted uncomfortably. We're just trying to understand what happened. I nodded slowly. Good, because I'd like to help you understand. The room went quiet. I could feel the tension shift. They'd expected me to be defensive, but I wasn't defensive. I was prepared. Let's start with the email, I said calmly, the one that should have been sent last Tuesday. I pulled up my tablet and turned it so everyone could see. Here are the meeting notes from October 12th. Item 7, Client Communication Responsibilities. Derek volunteered to handle all client emails for the Jensen account. The department head approved it. Sarah seconded it. It's documented. I watched Derek's face change. His confidence cracked just slightly. We discussed that I'd handle strategic communications, but routine updates. I cut him off gently. The email in question was strategic. It contained contract terms and negotiation points. That's not routine. I didn't give anyone time to respond. I moved to the next point. The proposal. Derek mentioned concerns about content. I pulled up another file. Here's the original draft I submitted on September 28th. It addressed every requirement the client specified in their RFP. Here's the version that was actually sent to the client on October 3rd. Notice the differences? I highlighted sections that had been removed, sections that directly addressed the client's key concerns. These edits were made by Derek and approved by the department head. I recommended against removing this content. That recommendation is in the comment thread. The room was completely silent now. The department head leaned forward to look at the screen. His face was unreadable, but I could see him processing. Derek started to say something, stopped, started again. I thought those sections were too detailed. I was trying to streamline. I kept my voice calm, factual. The client specifically asked for detailed implementation plans. Removing them made the proposal less responsive to their needs. I stated that in my feedback. It's timestamped. I turned to look Derek directly. You overruled me. Sarah was staring at the table. Another colleague who'd been nodding along with Derek earlier was suddenly very interested in his phone. The department head rubbed his temples. So you're saying this was a decision-making issue, not a communication breakdown? I shook my head. It was both. Derek made decisions that weakened our proposal, and then he failed to send the follow-up communication that might have salvaged the situation. I flagged both issues, multiple times. I pulled up my sent folder. Here's an email from October 8th raising concerns about the proposal changes. Here's one from October 15th asking about the status of client communications. Here's one from October 20th, explicitly warning that we were at risk of losing the client. I turned my tablet around so everyone could see the email chain. Derek responded to the first one saying he had it under control. He didn't respond to the second one at all. He responded to the third one saying I was being overdramatic. Derek's face had gone red. I was managing multiple accounts. I couldn't respond to every email immediately. I kept my tone even. I didn't ask for an immediate response. I asked for action. The client was waiting. We had a deadline, and you chose not to act. The department head looked at Derek. Is this accurate? Derek hesitated. I mean, there's context. Is it accurate? The department head repeated, his voice harder now. Derek deflated. Yes, he admitted quietly. The department head turned to me. Why didn't you escalate this sooner? I met his eyes. I did escalate it, to Derek, multiple times. He was the assigned lead on this account. Escalating over his head would have undermined his authority. I was trying to be a team player. The words hung there. Team player. The thing they always asked for. The thing that had made me silent while they built a case against me. The department head sat back in his chair. So, to be clear, you did your job, raised concerns appropriately, and those concerns were ignored. It wasn't really a question. Yes, I said simply. He looked around the table, and instead of examining the actual decisions that led to this situation, we called a meeting to implicitly blame the person who tried to prevent it. No one answered, because there was no good answer. He turned to Derek. My office after this meeting. Derek nodded, looking somehow smaller. The department head looked at me. I apologize. This meeting shouldn't have happened this way. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, I just nodded. Thank you, because that's all I needed. Not revenge, not humiliation, just acknowledgement that I'd been right. The department head dismissed the meeting. People filed out quickly, avoiding eye contact with me, probably replaying everything they'd said and realizing how it looked now. Sarah lingered for a moment, like she wanted to apologize, but I walked past her without a word. She'd made her choice. I didn't owe her forgiveness. That afternoon, I received an email from the department head. Derek was being removed from the Jensen account. I was being assigned as the new lead with full authority to make decisions without oversight. There was also a note at the bottom. Your diligence and professionalism have been noted. Let's schedule a conversation about your career development. It was corporate speak for, we know we almost screwed you over and we're trying to make it right. I appreciated it, but I also knew I'd never forget how quickly they'd been willing to throw me under the bus. 2 weeks later, I met with the Jensen client personally. I walked them through a revised proposal that restored all the content Derek had removed and added new elements based on their feedback. They appreciated the transparency. They appreciated that someone was finally listening to them. They signed the contract the following week. When I sent the executed agreement to the team, the department head replied immediately, "Outstanding work. This is what excellence looks like." I saved that email, not because I needed the validation, but because I wanted to remember what it cost to get it. The dynamic in meetings changed after that. When I spoke, people listened. When I raised concerns, they were taken seriously. When I said something wouldn't work, nobody tried to override me. Not because they suddenly respected me more as a person, but because they'd learned I was right. And being right, consistently and demonstrably, is the most powerful position you can hold. Derek eventually left the company. Sarah stayed quiet and distant, and I kept doing exactly what I'd always done, my job with diligence and integrity. They never blamed me without proof again, not because they'd become better people, but because they'd learned what happens when the truth comes out. And the truth always comes out. Always. You can build a case on assumptions. You can point fingers based on convenience. You can create narratives that serve your purposes. But eventually, documentation speaks louder than accusations. Evidence matters more than implications. And the person who keeps records, who does the work, who tells the truth even when it's uncomfortable, that person wins. Not immediately, not easily, but eventually. Always.